Hi, my name is John Blackman with the Heart of Austin Homes team, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about Code Next. So first, what is Code Next? Code Next is the City of Austin's attempt to redo their development plan. So the City of Austin has had the same development plan in place since the 80s. And the reason that the City of Austin is redoing this development plan called Code Next is to keep the city from being completely unaffordable in the next 20 years. Right now, the City of Austin is about 1 million people, and it's growing at about 500,000 people over 20 years. So you can see where that's headed. Where are all of those people going to go? And so without Code Next, we would be using our existing development plan to build homes the same way we've been doing it. And if we continue along that path, the average home price for the City of Austin will go from $350,000 where it is today to about $1.1 million in 20 years, which is going to make the city completely unaffordable for most residents. So that's the main reason that the City of Austin is trying to do this. And so today I'm going to break down a little bit of what it is, some of the problems, and maybe what some of the solutions could be. So right now Austin is blueprinting up the need for about 135,000 new homes over the next 20 years. And right now there are just too many single-family residences around the City of Austin. If you think about it, there's the core, which is downtown, and then you've got Westlake, the east side, south, and then anything north. It's all single-family residences. You've got some commercial and density areas, north of town around the university, and then some on South Lamar, but everything else is single-family. And people love Austin because it does have that single-family feel. But the more people move here, there's just no way to maintain that picture of a city without having increased price pressure. So the promised land, if we actually have a developed code, would be that we actually have affordable housing in Austin. If you've been here for any amount of time, you know that prices keep going up, which means taxes keep going up, and people are having to move further and further out of the city in order to live here. So if that's important to you and you don't want to see Austin become another San Francisco, then that's what Code Next is really aiming at trying to do. So at the end of the day, cities really have a choice between two of the three following things. You've got preservation, affordability, and prosperity, and you get to choose two. So most cities choose prosperity and preservation because they want to keep all of the charm that makes their city what it is, and they want to grow and prosper, but then they get rid of affordability because in order to have affordability, you need density. It's simple supply and demand. If you have more units, then hey, you've got a higher supply and you can offer them at lower prices. And when you build higher density units, the per door cost of that footage is just simply lower. And a lot of people say like, oh, well, I don't want a big high-rise apartment building in my single-family neighborhood. But there are other solutions to that. One potential solution is to create what they call like the middle density areas. So if you think of like South Lamar, they just recently put up those high-rise apartment condos over there, and they're right next to single-family. So in order to buffer that, you would have to build slightly more dense but not high-dense areas like high-rise apartments, and then maybe row houses, and then maybe duplexes or fourplexes. So that way it kind of eases into a residential neighborhood. And another solution is also new activity centers. So you think of like the Domain, that was really kind of an experiment done almost a decade ago, but it's worked out really, really well because now you have this new city center for people to go to. And so now instead of everyone having to travel downtown to Austin to get into and out of the city for work, they can have some other place to go. So right now, 29% of Austin's jobs are in downtown Austin. So within 3 miles of the city center, that's where everyone works. And so that's why you have all of the traffic breathing into the city in the morning and then breathing out at night. And so no matter how many roads you build, as long as the city center is where all of the jobs are, that's where everyone is going to have to come. So if we can develop Round Rock or South Austin and create new hubs of activity where people can go for their jobs, then that spreads the traffic out and doesn't keep everything going over the same roads. And you can do that with zoning without having to build any new roads. You just create new places for people to go. Another solution is to put increased density near transit systems. So that's like the light rail. I know that train gets a lot of flack because it doesn't get used, but a lot of people don't necessarily live on that line yet. So you have to build something before it actually gets utilized. So if some people give it some patience, Maybe it will work. I'm not for or against any of these given policies. They're just possible solutions. It's a really hard thing to get everyone to agree on, and it's very easy for people to kind of throw their hands up and just say that it will never work. But if we do that, then we're just going to live with the existing code, and we're going to end up with super unaffordable housing in Austin. So if it's something that you care about, or you want to have a say in how this is done, the best impact you can do is talk to your representatives directly. We had a council member come up and say, you know what, I'll have 400 or 500 emails show up in my inbox from someone's campaign, but that just doesn't occupy the brain space of a representative. What really influences them is hearing specifically from individuals who reach out and talk to them. So reach out and talk to your reps and tell them what your concerns are about Code Next. The solution for this, in terms of the schedule, as far as when Code Next might be complete, they've been working on it for several years, but the latest incarnation is that public hearings will be in May or June, and then they'll have their first reading in June, what they call their first reading, which is when the council actually looks at it, and then they'll finalize and vote on it in August. Now, something to keep in mind is that the code is not written by the council. The staff at the city write the code. And so they can put all sorts of things into it that they may or may not agree with. And then when they review it in August, they can craft and object to various items in the code. But they actually have to approve it at that time. The other option is that the whole thing could just fall apart and we'll be where we are today. However, we really want to avoid that. I mean, even if we have to start over again next year, we've got to find something that actually works. Code Next is actually not enforced today. So if you see a new house being built next to you and you're like, oh, Code Next is making this new house come up, that's actually not true. That house is going up under the existing code that we have today. So Code Next is kind of in the news a little bit and people are hearing about it, but they don't necessarily know what it is. At this point, it's not enforced, so it's purely something that's just on paper. It should go into effect next year, starting in January or February of 2019, assuming that it gets passed this August. So I'll be making some more videos when we have more changes to let you know about what is being evolved and what's coming up, and if we're actually able to stick to that deadline. If we keep the existing code, it means we're going to end up like San Francisco. Now, I like San Francisco. It's a fun place to visit, but I can't afford to live there. I would prefer to have a diverse housing economy where we have housing for all ranges of incomes, and that we can keep a city that's vibrant and doesn't have just rich people living in it. If we can actually redo the code, I think that is possible. It's going to take some time, but we can't just give up on it. Also to note, every council member that is on the seat right now is going back in the ballot this year. So if you don't like your council member or do, your vote especially counts this year, and it especially counts because of Code Next. Because once this code is rewritten and complete, it will impact and shape how Austin grows for the next 20 or 30 years. So your votes now actually have like a 2 or 3 decade impact more than they normally would. So pay attention to your local council elections and make a decision based on what you want to see for the city. At the end of the day, we really have to have a new plan. If we don't, then we're just going to keep what we've got, and what we've got just simply won't work. And if you want to learn more, you can also check out abor.com/codenext. There's a lot of resources there, and I'll put that link at the bottom too. So hopefully this has been useful for you, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.